To understand Daddy, you must first understand where he lived. He grew up in the marsh country along the eastern shoreline of the Chesapeake Bay, a wet and windy land of shallow ponds and winding creeks that reached through thousands of acres of waving sedges and cattails and finally touched the dry land above the tide line. Daddy loved the marsh. To say that the marsh influenced the lives of those who lived along its rim would be a colossal understatement. The marsh absolutely dominated their lives.
Well, you can't describe them in simple terms because their career was so long. I mean, it extended from roughly 1918, when they made their first decoys, all the way up to 1980. So their styles changed dramatically over that time period. And if someone did a description of them from the 20s, it would have been different from the 1930s, and it would have been different in the 40s when they started using different material and different designs, and then they got into the decorative mode in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, where they're dramatically different from the way they began.
Lemuel and Stephen Ward, two brothers rooted in the community life of Crisfield, Maryland, brought wildfowl carving to a place of prominence in American art history and national attention to their waterfront community. The quality, functionality, and beauty of their decoys attracted thousands of admirers to Lem and Steve's shop. Their early life experiences and the community of which they were a part set the stage for their future success. Lem and Steve drew a great deal of know-how from their father, Travis Ward Sr., both occupationally and artistically.
Their father was a waterman through and through. I mean, he made his living off of the water, and that's the way the boys were raised. Decoys were a very small part of what Travis Ward did. Mostly he was fishing, and he was clamming, and he was hunting, and he was a typical waterman in a remote, out-of-the-way place in America, down that dirt road to Crisfield back in his day.
In the marsh country, a man's success was measured by the bushel. The more bushels a man pitched up on the wharf from his boat, the greater his stature with the community. As a barber and carver, Daddy never ranked very high. This was illustrated by an incident that occurred one day as he was walking along the road towards the creek, carving on a small block of wood. A waterman stopped him and asked him what he was doing. Daddy replied that he was making a duck head. For that, the waterman soundly reprimanded him. "Here you are, a grown man, wasting your time whittling. You ain't never going to amount to nothing."
They were barbers, as we have said. They cut hair. Now, in a watering community where most people worked on the water or worked hard, during the day they had a lot of time, and they did have time to carve. And they worked a lot of times in the evenings. The barbershops would stay open late in the evenings, and Saturdays was when they were busiest. But most of the time when they went to sweep the barbershop, the floor was mixed with hair and cedar chips, cedar shavings from where they had been working.
He used a hatchet, and he was an artist with a hatchet. I still this day, I don't understand how he did it, but when he finished a decoy and gave it to Lem to paint, Lem looked it over, and he had to do little or no sanding. Now, that's difficult to believe with a sharp tool, but that's actually what happened. It was an embodiment of art. That's all I can say, is he was a true artist.
And then if you go to the painting side, Lem was the painter and was better with the brush than almost anybody. The stippling paint where he achieved a depth of color in the solid color and a texture was copied by many people. He learned how to define feathering in a unique way with very small, short strokes. He would actually outline a feather with small, short strokes. But he was an artist with the brush, and clearly he set a standard that others tried to meet over time. He mixed his paints in clam shells, oyster shells, so he knew exactly how he was blending paint, blending two colors in the shell. When it came off the brush, it was more than one color, and he called it pulling feathers rather than painting feathers. There's no question that Lem's handicap with his left hand probably influenced him more towards carving than we'll ever know, because he was a waterman at heart who couldn't do a lot of the waterman type things that many of his neighbors and friends could do. And carving and painting was something that he could do and could do successfully.
So you can imagine, try to imagine the work that he did working with that left arm as he did. So, and if you'll look at some of the birds, he didn't paint under the bill because it was hard for him to hold it in his left hand.